The first step is going to be unloading all the tension from the preload adjuster. This will make it easier to remove the spring. Next, I'll break loose the bolts at both the bottom and the top of the shock. This will make it easier to fully remove the bolts once we're ready to. For the lower mounting point of the shock, there's a 14mm on one side and a 17mm on the other side. For the top part of the shock, you just need the 17mm on one side. Now that both bolts are broken loose, we'll remove them from the bike. I noticed that both of these bolts did not have any grease on them from the factory, so when you reinstall these bolts, you'll want to put a little bit of grease on there. My bike has a skid plate from T-Rex Racing on it, and I just had to kind of bend the back part of it out of the way so that I had access to remove the bolt from the lower part of the shock. I'm removing this rear mud flap just to get easier access to pull the shock body out from the bike. The only parts I had to remove was this mud flap and the two plastic side panels that give you access to the top bolts of the shock. Once the shock's loose, you can do a little 90-degree turn and it comes right out of there without having to fuss with it. And here is our shock. We've got it fully removed from the bike, and now we just need to compress the spring, pop that one off, and put the new spring on. I had the wrong spring compressor, and I'm not going to show the part where I compressed the spring. I swapped it out. So make sure you get yourself the right tool and compress that spring, and then you'll be good to go. With that done, we're ready to throw the shock assembly back inside the bike. I greased up the shock mounting bolts, and the upper one went in with no problems, and the lower one decided to give me a little bit of trouble, but once I got everything lined up, it went in no problem. Here I am fighting with that lower shock mounting bolt. I just needed to lower the bike down a little bit, and it lined right up. All in all, this was a pretty simple job. It took about 35 minutes, and I think you can do it yourself. The one tool I'd recommend having is a spring compressor, and other than that, it's pretty standard tools.